This is the most important season for Deshaun Watson and the Cleveland Browns, and this may be the most important season in Deshaun Watson's career. This upcoming season, the Cleveland Browns need to make a deep playoff run, and Deshaun Watson has to stay healthy. A couple of years ago, the Cleveland Browns made a shocking decision to go out there and trade for Deshaun Watson from the Houston Texans, and they gave him a fully guaranteed contract. And a lot of owners frowned upon that decision because since that day, the quarterback market has not been the same. It was bound to happen, but the Cleveland Browns just pushed on it sooner than later. They desperately needed a quarterback that could come in and could be a franchise quarterback. And at the time, Deshaun Watson was one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, but it was a huge problem going on here. When they made that trade, he was dealing with a lot of allegations, and he would be suspended for majority of the 2022 season. He only played 6 games in 2022, but he missed an entire year. After that season, he had 33 passing touchdowns and 7 interceptions because he no longer wanted to play with the Houston Texans. And I don't blame Deshaun Watson for sitting out that last year with the Houston Texans in 2021 because he was just done with the franchise. But hindsight, maybe he should have played because he did look rusty in 2022. In 2023, he got off to a slow start as well, but it did look better. This is my thing with Deshaun Watson. The excuses are running out. I still believe that he could be a top 5 to top 10 quarterback in the NFL, but he doesn't really need to go out there and put the team on his back because the Cleveland Browns have a great defense and they have great offensive personnel as well. And they only lost 1 game this season when Deshaun Watson was a starting quarterback. They went 5-1, and they made the NFL playoffs dealing with numerous injuries to guys like Deshaun Watson and to the offensive line as well. I'll get more into those injuries in just a couple of seconds. But Deshaun Watson has to be a game changer with the Cleveland Browns, but it starts with him just staying healthy. When things started to get good against the Baltimore Ravens in the second half, he was perfect. Unfortunately, he tears his shoulder up. He would miss the rest of the season. If Deshaun Watson can stay healthy, the Cleveland Browns can make a deep playoff run. I'm not saying that they can go out there and make the Super Bowl per se, but they can definitely be a threat, especially in their division. They can compete with teams like the Steelers, the Baltimore Ravens, and the Cincinnati Bengals, and they did that with backup quarterback play. So imagine what they can do with Deshaun Watson if he can just go out there and just stay on the field and he can stay out of his own way. And when you look at the rest of this Cleveland Browns team, they have a lot of talent all over the field. The last 3 off seasons, they have made major trades to go get wide receiving help to help out Deshaun Watson. They went and they traded for Amari Cooper from the Dallas Cowboys, and he's been a great wide receiver. He just had 72 catches for 1,250 receiving yards, 5 receiving touchdowns, and he averaged 17 yards a catch. That is very good, and he is still one of the best route runners in the NFL. You also made a trade to get Elijah Moore. He came over to the team. He's a very good number 3 wide receiver. When you look at Elijah Moore, never got the breakout with the New York Jets. Horrible offensive play, horrible offensive situation with the coaching that he was in as well, and just terrible quarterback play. He comes over to the Cleveland Browns, 640 receiving yards, 2 receiving touchdowns. He averaged 10 yards a catch. And the thing is, with their wide receiving room, they have Amari Cooper, who can take the top off the defense, but is a great route runner. Elijah Moore can go inside that slot and can do the dirty work for you. But they also just made a trade to get Jerry Jeudy. He was in a similar situation like Elijah Moore. Never had great quarterback play. And now Russell Wilson, his last year with the Denver Broncos, was a better quarterback. But it was just too late with Jerry Jeudy. He was selected in the first round, and this kid needed to change the scenery. Very good route runner. Is very explosive as well. Has a lot of drops before in his career. But that was early on in his career. I do believe that Jerry Jeudy will come over with the Cleveland Browns. He fits the Kevin Stefanski system. He's going to go out there, and he's going to have a career year with the Cleveland Browns. For one, he doesn't have to be the number 1 and number 2 target. That's Amari Cooper and that's David Njoku. Those are the top dogs over here. He can automatically become the 3rd or 4th wide receiving option, and it's only going to help out Jerry Jeudy. Very good route runner, like I said before. And when you look at his numbers this season, they weren't terrible. 758 receiving yards, 2 receiving touchdowns, 14 yards a catch. You have a lot of good talent in that receiving room and that tight end room as well. They re-signed David Njoku to a deal. He was never able to break out early in his career, but the signs were there. This season, he broke out into looking like a franchise tight end. 882 receiving yards, 6 receiving touchdowns, and he was key on 2nd and 3rd downs for Deshaun Watson and for Joe Flacco as well. So when you look at this Browns team, just in the receiving room alone, they have a lot of talent, and they may have the most talented wide receiving core in this division. Yes, the Cincinnati Bengals have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. They're phenomenal, but they just lost Tyler Boyd. When you just talk about depth pieces, the Cleveland Browns may have the best weapons in this division that can go out there and can stretch the field and can cover every blade of grass. And that is something that Kevin Stefanski has been looking for since he has become the head coach with the Cleveland Browns when Baker Mayfield was a starting quarterback as well. Now, this is also another thing to look at. We have to give Kevin Stefanski his credit. One of the best coaches in the NFL this season. When Deshaun Watson went down, he found a way to go out there and win football games. PJ Walker came in. He did not look good. They did give Dorian Thompson-Robinson some time as well. He had a horrible game against the Baltimore Ravens. He was not ready. Maybe in the future, he could be a capable backup or maybe even be a solid starter. But right now, he's not ready to carry that load. So they called up Joe Flacco, who was on his couch, and he looked like a star on the back half of the season. Now, the wheels did fall off in the playoffs against the Houston Texans. But at the same time, Joe Flacco came in this system and looked very good. Give Joe Flacco his credit, but a lot of that was on Kevin Stefanski with the way that he was calling up plays and dialing up that run game as well. And I do believe that Jameis Winston, if Deshaun Watson can't stay healthy, he can come in and he can give you some very good production as well. He's a similar quarterback like Joe Flacco. He doesn't have the playoff success or the Super Bowl win like a Joe Flacco, but has a big arm and can go out there and can make some elite throws. It's just the turnovers with Jameis Winston. But you can say the same thing with Joe Flacco. The man went out there and threw 2 pick sixes against the Houston Texans in the playoffs. So they're both quarterbacks that are going to go out there and stretch the field, and turnovers are going to come on with that. It's the reason why they're both backups in the NFL. But Jameis Winston is one of the better backups that you can have behind Deshaun Watson, so I love that signing. The offensive line did give me some concern last season because they dealt with so many injuries. Jack Conklin went down, but when DeJuan Jones came in, he looked like a franchise tackle. He is 6'8". He is a mountain of a man. Not too many pass rushers could get past him. 374 pounds. And the one thing that you do worry about with bigger offensive linemen, how they look against more athletic defensive ends, he looked very good because he's practicing against guys like Myles Garrett, some of the best pass rushers that you can practice against on this roster and in the NFL. So he looked very good. So if they want to move off of Jack Conklin, if they want to trade him, they can do that. I would keep Jack Conklin around because Jedrick Wills Jr., even though that he is a solid tackle at times, he's not the same tackle that he was his rookie season. That rookie season was special. Since then, the production has dipped year after year. And I'm not saying move on from Jedrick Wills, but he's not the same tackle that he was his rookie season. Then when DeJuan Jones went down, you had another tackle that came in. He didn't look as good as DeJuan Jones, but he looked okay. And that was James Hudson III. So their offensive line has a lot of depth, and they're young there. I'm not going to say that they're one of the best offensive lines in the NFL just yet, but they are a very solid unit when they're fully healthy. So their offense, it really just comes down to the health of Deshaun Watson. That's pretty much it. And that major trade. I would not be saying that, but they traded so many first-round picks to go get Deshaun Watson. They have to get a return on that investment. And it just comes down to his health. You'll have a lot of insiders and a lot of people in the mainstream media say this about the Cleveland Browns, or they're a joke. Deshaun Watson's not the same quarterback. He looks washed up. In those 6 games, he didn't look washed up. And that one game that they lost against the Steelers that he was starting in, it was a pick 6 that was not his fault. The tight end pulled up. He throws the football. Harrison Bryant pulls up. Here comes Alex Highsmith out of nowhere. Goes for a pick 6. That's not on Deshaun Watson. That's not on the head coach either. That's just bad luck. And then it was a fumble for 6 as well in that game by Deshaun Watson. That was on him. But they held the Steelers in check. So if the offense is able to go out there and play better and take care of the football, they would have won that game. And you also had Nick Chubb go down in that game as well. And that's one more part of the offense that I do want to talk about. Nick Chubb has suffered 2 brutal knee injuries now. One in college and one in the NFL. I don't know if he can bounce back from this one. He's still going to try to go out there and play. But Nick Chubb was one of the best running backs in the NFL before he suffered that injury. If he can return back to just 80% of what he was before, that's a great running back to have. But I am worried about Nick Chubb because they used him as a bell cow. He would get the football 25 to 30 times in a game. Yes, you have Jerome Ford, and he played very well when Nick Chubb went down, but he's no Nick Chubb. He can break 3 to 4 tackles in space and still has the acceleration to go in open field and get you some more yardage. I don't know if he's going to be able to hit that top end speed anymore with those knee injuries. And if history shows anything, usually when running backs start to suffer knee injuries, they're never the same. Maybe he can be the exception, and I hope that he will be the exception, because regardless, if he can return to form or not, Nick Chubb was a very special running back before the injury with the Cleveland Browns, and I hope that he can return back to what he used to be with this team as a whole. They have Jerome Ford, like I mentioned before, can catch the football at the backfield. He averaged 4 yards a carry, 813 yards on the season, 4 rushing touchdowns, and you also have Deontay Foreman as well. The worst case scenario, if Nick Chubb is not the same, you can just do running back by committee with Nick Chubb, with Deontay Foreman. And then you can have Jerome Ford getting some carries as well. As long as you don't have Kareem Hunt with this roster. No offense to Kareem Hunt, but he was not the same running back. He struggled immensely, and he was never supposed to come back to the Cleveland Browns. And the coaches saw that right before this season, the regression in his top end speed and how he struggled to come out of the backfield at times. So the offense looks very good on paper, and I trust Kevin Stefanski to go out there and figure things out. As far as the defense, this is the strongest unit with the Cleveland Browns. Their defense was phenomenal. Jim Schwartz comes over in his first year, transformed them into being one of the best defenses in the NFL. I know the numbers say that the Baltimore Ravens had the best defense, but in my opinion, the Cleveland Browns had the best defense. They have lockdown corners, great linebackers, and they have great pass rushers as well. They can compete against any offense and go out there and give them a lot of problems. Look at what they did against the Steelers, the Baltimore Ravens, and look at what they did against the San Francisco 49ers as well. They did a hit job on the San Francisco 49ers before George Kittle and Christian McCaffrey and all those guys dealing with injuries. They did a hit job in that game, not George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, before those guys went down, because that was a narrative in that game when the Browns beat them. Well, the 49ers had so many injuries. Christian McCaffrey got hurt. Deebo Samuel got hurt. Even before those guys got injured, the defense was giving Brock Purdy a lot of problems. And you can say that the weather played a huge part into it. I didn't see the Cleveland Browns defense, the Cleveland Browns offense struggled with the same problems that the San Francisco 49ers offense struggled with, because the Cleveland Browns defense was just that special this season. Is it possible that they could drop off this season? It could be, but Jim Schwartz is a better game planner and is a better defensive coordinator than Joe Woods ever was with the Cleveland Browns. And I expect for them to be better for this upcoming season as well, because they dealt with some injuries on the defensive end. Grant Delpit went out. He was a great safety before he went down. You obviously have a great pass rush, like I mentioned before. Myles Garrett had 14 sacks in the season, 4 forced fumbles. It helped earn him a Defensive Player of the Year award. You have Dalvin Tomlinson, who is a great defensive tackle that can come in there and push the pocket. You also have Shelby Harris as well at the other defensive tackle position. This is a very interesting thing. In the second round, they selected Maurice Hurst II, a big defensive tackle that can play alongside Dalvin Tomlinson. He can come in, give you a lot of pressure up the middle, and he can stop the run as well. I don't expect for Shelby Harris to get majority of the workload alongside Dalvin Tomlinson. I expect for it to be that big rookie to play alongside Dalvin Tomlinson. And when it's time for Dalvin Tomlinson to leave the team because of contract situations, or if they don't want to re-sign him, Maurice can come in and he can be that starting nose tackle for the next couple of years. I'm very high on that pick. You also have Zadarius Smith, only 5.5 sacks on the season, 1 forced fumble. And you'll say this about him: why did they go out there and re-sign him? He only had 5.5 sacks on the season. You just can't go by numbers. He was great against stopping the run, and his pressure rate was high as well. A very good defensive end, and he helped elevate the game of Myles Garrett as well. Now, Myles Garrett is a beast, but he's never played alongside a consistent pass rusher. Yes, you had Jadeveon Clowney, but Zadarius Smith, just because he's not getting sacks, doesn't mean that he's not getting double teamed and chip blocked on the other side. Myles Garrett helps him out, but at the same time, Zadarius Smith helps him out as well. You have key situations to where they're stopping the run against the Steelers. They're stopping Jaylen Warren in the backfield, and here comes Myles Garrett out of nowhere, and they're gang tackling the guy behind the line of scrimmage. That can go for a fumble, and that's basically what happened in one of the games later in the season for the Cleveland Browns, by both of those guys just working together. So to be able to keep that tandem together, that was a great thing for the Cleveland Browns. Their linebackers are very good as well. I can't say enough good things about Jeremiah Osua-Koromora. Was a phenomenal linebacker this season. 72 solo tackles, 3.5 sacks, 1 forced fumble, 2 interceptions. And he had a great game against San Francisco 49ers. In my opinion, that was his breakout game. He's had some good games before, but he's flying all over the field, covering Christian McCaffrey at the backfield, covering Deebo Samuel across the middle, covering George Kittle as well, and he was pressuring Brock Purdy. That was his breakout game. That was his I'm here, I'm a star moment. And from that point on, he would go out there and have an impact on every single game for the rest of the season. Just because you don't see a player and they don't have the big highlights, don't mean that they're not going out there and making an immediate impact. He was sticking to tight ends. That's taking a read away from a quarterback. He's sticking across the middle of the slant routes. That's taking another read away from the quarterback, and it forces the quarterback to go into a different situation. So he has some great moments this season for the Browns, and when it's time to pay him, they better pay him because he's going to be one of the better linebackers in the NFL for the next couple of years. Their secondary was great as well, even with those injuries that they were dealing with. Denzel Ward is a great corner when he can stay healthy. We know that he suffered with injuries in the last couple of years. Greg Newsome II is a very good football player. Martin Emerson Jr. is the best cover corner on this squad, and Denzel Ward is a great cover corner, and the same with Greg Newsome as well. 4 interceptions on the season, 14 pass deflections. He was amazing. And basically, quarterbacks just stopped throwing his way. And the same with Denzel Ward as well. That's why I hated when Grant Delpit went down, because he was so great covering things over the top to where it put a lot of pressure and a lot of strain on the quarterback. Like I mentioned before, I'm not saying that the Cleveland Browns will go out there and win the Super Bowl. I'm not saying that they'll go out there and make the AFC Championship. But it is possible that they could go out there and do those things as well because of the potential that they have. With great trades at the wide receiving position, if Deshaun Watson can return back to form. And this is my thing with Deshaun Watson. He doesn't have to go out there and throw for 33 passing touchdowns and 7 interceptions. He never had a great defense with the Houston Texans. He never had this many weapons with the Houston Texans. Yes, he had Brandon Cooks, he had DeAndre Hopkins and Will Fuller, but he never had those guys all together. You have this Cleveland Browns roster right here. It's weapons all over the field. He just has to go out there and manage the game at times and show up when they need him to. And he did that against the Baltimore Ravens. He did that against the Cincinnati Bengals. We can't forget that. He looked very good. And this is a guy that was dealing with a lot of rust. He's only played 12 games in the last 2 seasons. If you can bump that up, I think that he can return back to form. And I know that you're in a tough division with the Steelers, with the Baltimore Ravens, with the Cincinnati Bengals, and the Bengals are dealing with injuries this season. But the one interesting thing that a lot of people don't talk about, when they had Jacoby Brissett, they were giving the Cincinnati Bengals a lot of problems because the Cincinnati Bengals could not go out there and protect Joe Burrow. And I expect for the same problems to occur this season as well. With this great defense that they have, the Steelers will see if Russell Wilson can be that franchise quarterback or if he can just be a solid quarterback that they're looking for. But I think the Steelers will be tough. The Baltimore Ravens are going to be tough. But you look at the wide receiving weapons for the Baltimore Ravens, they're not the best. And I can say the same thing with the Steelers. You have George Pickens. It's a lot of question marks in that wide receiving room. And they have a brand new offensive play caller as well. So every single team has a weakness, just like every other team in the NFL. But this would be the hardest division. And the Cleveland Browns made the playoffs this season dealing with all those injuries. So the expectation is higher. If they're not dealing with those injuries for his upcoming season, they better make the NFL playoffs, and they have to win a playoff game as well to get that return on investment from that Deshaun Watson trade. But I do not believe that the Cleveland Browns are regretting that trade at all. I know a lot of Cleveland Brown fans, they come out and say, I wish we would have kept Baker Mayfield. That ship sailed a very long time ago. He was never going to be the same quarterback that you guys are looking for when he had that one great season with the Browns. It just fell off the tracks. And I do think long term that the Cleveland Browns will be a better organization because of it. But let me know in the comment section below, how do you guys feel about the Cleveland Browns, and are they a serious threat in the NFL? If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. If you like the video, hit the like button. Most importantly, I want each and every last one of you guys stay safe, stay positive. Thanks for watching the video, guys. God bless. Peace.